Welcome to Realty Resource Radio. We can be found on the internet at realtyresourceradio.com. I'm Greg. I'm here with my wife Lori. We're both realtors in the Central Ohio area, and we've been here for working real estate over 20 years.
Yep.
So we know our stuff. We bring on the best people in the business every week to talk about your home, because your home is an investment. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but it is. And
Absolutely.
you know, on our show today, we have Auditor Clarence MIngo. Just one of the things the auditors do is oversee your property value. Auditor MIngo has a distinguished career helping our community. He's a veteran of the United States Army with a law degree from the Ohio State University. Franklin County courts appointed him to help children with their legal rights. Through the Legal Aid Society of Columbus Neighborhood Services Project, he was helping the poor with their legal rights. He was a commissioner in the Ohio Court of Claims. He's been the Franklin County Auditor since 2009, and the people gave him their thumbs up and voted him back into office twice. He's exactly the kind of person you want overseeing your property value.
Absolutely.
Because he is a strong, fiscal conservative. Thank you for being on our show today, Auditor Clarence MIngo.
You know what? Real privilege, great honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
So we have some questions for you today.
Hey, I'm here to answer. Hope to be insightful on some level.
Well, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your recently completed 2014 triennial update. What is that exactly, first of all?
Well, so Lori, as most people know, every 6 years, county auditors statutorily have to look at the value of property in their given county. Now, here in Franklin County, we have about 440,000 parcels of property. So that means every 6 years we do a very comprehensive sweep throughout the county. We study, examine, and what you might call appraise. Every structure here in the county, we assign a new value to it. Every 3 years, in between those 6 years period, we do what we call a triennial update. We don't actually deploy boots on the ground or field appraisers to study and examine the property visually, but rather we look at market data, and then we adjust properties neighborhood by neighborhood based on how the market has changed in those neighborhoods. So the triennial update is just an update. It's a soft update as to how the market has changed in between that 6 year time frame.
Okay, and I mean, how does that affect people, would you say?
Yeah, so a couple things happen. The auditor every 6 years takes a very comprehensive look at property values. Every 3 years we do this triennial update, and the effect is always, as you can imagine, with respect to the value of the property. This year the property might be 150, next year it might be 175, depending on how the market has changed. The impact, generally speaking, might be felt relative to your tax bill.
I was just going to say with taxes,
Yeah, so
that's where I hear it most in the real estate field is, well, the auditor site says the value is, and sometimes it's in people's favor, and sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it isn't, but with the great takeaway there, Lori, is that whatever that value is, it is not arbitrarily set by the auditor. It's just a reflection of the market. My staff and I, we don't arbitrarily determine what a property value should be. Our job is to study the market and to tell you, based on the science and data, what the market says your property value should be.
So it's like a percentage if you look at it as a whole in an area or something like that?
You could certainly view it that way, but even more specifically, we're just telling you how the market is impacting your home. We're not arbitrarily deciding a number.
I see.
But we are just telling you, much as the stock market tells you how much your stock is worth.
That's a good comparison, yeah.
We're just telling you how much the market says your value should be, and that's driven by sales information.
Absolutely.
Basically, we just look at that sales information, we apply that sales information to your particular home, in addition to the aesthetic features that make up your home, and we derive value.
And I had a question, but I lost my train of thought. So
That's
Greg, go
Well,
ahead.
you would know then, so if homes in my neighborhood really aren't going up in value, you would see that, and you would know the homes in this neighborhood aren't going up much in value. And so when you did that valuation, it would reflect on my value.
Yeah, Greg, I mean, you're spot on. What we are telling you, if you receive a home value that's $50,000 lower than it was 3 or 6 years ago, what we're telling you is that the sales in your neighborhood have not been very strong. We're telling you, in aggregate, the sales in your neighborhood have been weak, and as a result of that, the value of your home is going to be lower to reflect those sales.
I remember what my question was. Do you look at just raw numbers, or does it take into account, like, concessions, for instance? You know what I'm talking about? Like if a seller pays, say, $3,000 towards closing costs and things like that. Like appraisers actually get into all of that, and it's sometimes hard to see. Or you see where properties are oftentimes people say, how come this property sold for more than what it was listed for?
Right.
And I explained to them there was probably a bidding war, or the person could afford the payment but couldn't afford the down payment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, what we look at, Lori, as best we can derive it, would be an arm's length transaction. We look at what a willing seller,
Yep.
willing buyer would do without any other circumstance.
Gotcha.
And so for that reason, we typically don't consider short sales
Okay.
when we go
that's good
to
to
appraise
know.
property.
That's good.
We also don't consider foreclosures. Prior to the recession, we didn't have these record number of foreclosures.
Sure.
You remember during the recession, we had a lot of bank-owned sales.
Oh, yeah.
We weren't able to look at those bank-owned sales and determine what property value should be.
Right. Because,
Well, that's tough because a lot of homes weren't even selling. People just basically said, I'm not selling right now.
It was tough as a
Yes.
realtor to try and comp those out and list them.
Yes.
And at some point you're like, well, the value has to come back up. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And if you think about it, a foreclosure, it's not a sale; it's a legal action.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
there's no sale; it's a legal
Exactly.
action.
No one's
so
making money here.
No one's making money here.
Well, and a lot of
It's-
times
it's
the
making
foreclosed properties have had things removed.
Yes.
Or the people have beaten the place up. I've seen a lot of these foreclosed places, and plumbing is missing. Electrical, kitchen appliances are
toilets.
missing. Oh, all kinds of stuff.
Essentials.
So I can
Essentials.
see why you
Yeah,
could
that's
not count those
Yeah.
as like as part of your property valuation of a neighborhood.
But so a lot of times, guys, when we do our revaluations, people come out and they say, "I can't believe this. My property value has gone down, but my tax bill has gone up." Now, why would that be? How is it that the value of my home is $50,000 less than it was 3 years ago, but my actual tax bill has gone up?
Yeah.
The reason is because, in large part, what you pay in property taxes is driven by levies. A lot of people think what you pay in property taxes is driven by what the county
The value.
auditor says your value, but it's
Yeah,
really
you're right.
driven by
If there's school levies.
there are school
or,
levies or other levies on the ballot. When we raise our hand and say we're voting for those levies, which is okay if we decide to do that, what we're saying is we want to fund that school district
Right.
or we want to fund
Right.
this firefighter pension through our property taxes. And so what we saw in the recession was this conundrum where values were going down, which is a not thing in and of itself, but then your tax bill was going up.
Right.
Because the school district
That
was
makes
saying,
perfect
hey,
sense.
we still need
Levies
money.
still were kicking in
Levies were still
from
kicking in.
prior votes and things.
But
Yes.
if they pass some of those levies, hopefully that will increase the value of their home eventually.
You know what?
I remember Greg being a teacher in a district that didn't pass very many levies.
Right.
And their values significantly plummeted.
Yeah.
And then once they started passing them, now that area has grown back up.
Yeah, you're right, Lori. Strong school districts with good funding attracts homeowners who want to be in those districts, and they'll pay out a premium to be. They'll pay out a premium to be there. So you're right. There's a nexus.
Well, thank you for answering that.
And we've had a lot of people come to us to say, "Hey, the auditor has my home valued wrong.
Yeah, we have.
They need to lower the value. Can you help me out there, realtor? Is my home really worth what the auditor says?" And we put stuff together.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, sometimes I've gone back and I've said, "Don't say anything to the auditor
Right.
because he has you low."
Yeah, no, you know what?
Which I mean, as far as taxes go, right? If
Yeah.
my house is valued lower, I'm paying less in
Well,
taxes.
that's what they think. But you just
And,
said
and if it's higher,
not always.
If,
He just
it's
said.
well, yeah, oh, wow, yeah, you got
See?
the levies in there too. So
Exactly.
it's not just a percentage of,
Right.
of home value.
Here's a fundamental truth about serving as auditor. And there's no shame or embarrassment on my part in saying this because it's true, and that would be simply this. We're not always right. We are not always right. We have to look at 440,000 parcels
Yeah,
of
I
property.
can't even imagine.
And when you do, yes, when you do that, there will always be some that will be a little too high or perhaps a little too low. So that's one reason why you might get a value from the auditor that is not as accurate as you think it should be. We may not always be right. The second reason would be because an auditor value is just a hair different than what a fee appraiser might appraise a property at. When I say a fee appraiser, I mean, for instance, someone that does it
The
for
guy
a
from the
perhaps-
bank.
They're sitting
Yes.
down and they're looking at,
Well, the auditor looks at sales information over a 3-year period
Right,
of time
right.
when we determine value. So
So you
we're
could have
looking
looked at it a couple years ago.
we're
And it
looking
hasn't
at
kicked in yet.
we're looking at 3 years worth of sales data and determining value. The bank appraiser is looking at sales
6 months.
There you go, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And so there's probably a 5 to 10% difference
Yeah.
in the value, which is the margin of error for
That's
appraisals.
nice then,
Yeah.
because that means typically that your value is going to be tad on the lower side if home values go up.
Yep, sometimes that is the trend. Sometimes that's very
So
true.
if someone can they I don't know if dispute is the correct word, but if they think their value's wrong, is there some form they can fill out or anything like that?
Hey, Lori, here's the deal. Yes, there is a form, and yes, we want them to, because part of our process of ensuring that values are right is simply getting the homeowner engaged in that process. Sometimes you know more about your property than we do.
Okay.
We want your voice in that process. Anyone that has a value in this county that they don't feel is accurate, we want them filling out that appeals form. We want to take a good look at that, and we want that value
Where
to
do
be
they
right.
get that at?
They can call 525-HOME, 614-525-HOME,
Okay.
and just ask for a Board of Revision complaint.
Okay.
A BOR complaint. We'll take that under advisement. We'll look at that property, and our job is just to make sure the value is accurate. We don't care if it's high or low. We just want it to be accurate,
Okay,
and
well, that's
sometimes the
good to know.
homeowner can help us out.
And they're reaching out. You're reaching out to folks in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
Maybe when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that.
I will look forward to it. I'll be right here.
Awesome.
You're listening to Realty Resource Radio. You can find us on the internet at realtyresourceradio.com.